week on Spotlight, I am joined by the fiercely funny and entertaining Irish star. She's an Irish comedian and the rising star indeed. It is Aoife. Aoife Dunne. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome to my humble abode. I feel like I know you, but I don't know you because I really wanted to have you on the show, not only just to champion Irish comedians, female comedians, but also just, you're so funny. The viral, I'm sorry moment, which we're going to discuss now in a minute, has just made you more of a household name than I think you even realise yourself.
Yeah, like I was, the most shocking thing was I was at a festival like a while back, and that was the first time like I was with my friends and I started getting stopped by people, and some people wanted photos and I was like, wait, what? Like, do people know me? But like my boyfriend was laughing because he was like, you need to change your name, because people would just come up to you and point to me and be like, you're the comedian, but they wouldn't remember my name. And I'm like, I think I need to change my name. Like Aoife Dunne, it doesn't have the same ring or something.
No, I think it's lovely. We've got the Joanne McNally's. We have, loads of Irish female comedians. So I don't think, do not change your name.
I'll make Aoife a good household name.
Yeah, absolutely. How does that feel to have that tagline, Irish rising star or rising star comedy gold? Does it feel good? Is it something you've always aspired to be? Because, this wasn't always your wheelhouse to be a comedian.
No, like honestly, no. I think I never in my life imagined becoming a comedian, because I would go to a lot of comedy, and actually so not last summer, the summer before, I was at the Paddy Power comedy festival, and I was there with my partner, and he reminded me recently, and he was like, did you ever think 2 years later you'd be, so I'm playing the Paddy Power this summer.
Amazing. And
it's just like a full circle. And when I was sitting there watching those comedians, I never for a moment was like, oh, that's going to be me one day. I think even at that point, I was just making comedy content, but I never imagined that I would step foot on stage. Like, it all happened very quickly, but in a way kind of organically. And when I say it to my friends, I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Anyone who knows me is like, we can believe it. And so I think when it comes to comedy, it's one of these things where I think if you have a natural funny bone, the only thing you need on top of that then is the guts to kind of get on stage.
God, yeah, guts.
Yeah, it's courage. Yeah.
Thank you. We said that in unison.
So cute.
Put your big girl pants on, get up on stage and just go for it. When the lights come on, you don't get the jitters, you don't get the...
Oh, I do.
You do?
Like,
okay.
My Fitbit thinks I'm always going for a swim. Like, it gives me this, when I'm on stage, it's like, congratulations on your high intense workout. Sometimes it thinks I'm on the elliptical machine because I'm literally like, my heart rate must be so high. But I'm most nervous before I go on. And I was with loads of comedians, much more kind of professional comedians at the weekend. And I was like so humbled because they were also in this kind of space of like, don't talk to me, I'm super nervous. I was like, oh, so you guys get it too, even after 10 years. So apparently it's just a thing in comedy. Most comedians, like maybe the hour before, we freak out. Because I think in that moment, I'm like, why am I doing this? Oh my God, I'm not funny. I've never said one funny thing in my life. And then the lights go up and you kind of forget everything. Wow. And yeah, it's crazy.
That's amazing psyche to even tap into. Yeah. We'll come back to that. You just said a silly sentence there, and I'm going to pull you up on that because you said more professional. They're only just more well known, Aoife. That's all it is.
I'm always putting myself down. I'm full of self-doubt.
Because also that it's like building that confidence, building that cache of work. But I mean, you've got shows booked and, you're being a booked comedian now. So this isn't something you're doing on the side now. This is the full-time role. I
think it's one of those things where you don't realize you've got there. It's not like this big aha moment of like, oh, I'm here now. I've arrived, this kind of feeling. And I was with my friend who's also a comedian, and she said, how many tickets have you sold so far for one of the shows? And I was like, oh, we're not sold out. I think like 500. And she was like, Aoife, that's 500 people who never knew you like 2 years ago, and they've bought tickets to your show. Do you realize this is it now? You're here. And I was like, oh yeah. But it's kind of one of those things where you're just so busy kind of like working on the show and writing and doing all these things. You never for a second go like, oh, this is great. And so you have to take a moment to sit and actually like, because it's too easy to look ahead at what's left to do. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm kind of just forcing myself now to be like, okay, if you just take a moment and let it sink in, like enjoy where you're at, because it's pointless then if you're constantly running on to the next thing or comparing yourself to, as I said, they're more professional people. So I'm trying now the last few weeks to just sort of stop and go, oh my God, you're living your dream.
Absolutely.
Like, and oh my God, I've goosebumps.
No, so
even.
you're never allowed to say that sentence again. Certainly
Yes.
not on this podcast, but in general, don't say that sentence again,
you're
because
right.
just so everybody knows, people are like, okay, I don't know her, and they're obviously listening in and getting intrigued. But you actually have, between your TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, tra-la-la-la-la, 2 million. Hello. I mean, I don't even think some of the people that you seem to think, have that level of followership. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Aoife, I mean, that's a task in itself. I
Well,
don't have that,
2 million, it reached 2 million accounts, but I have 160,000 followers, but still.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how have you built that? I mean, we'll talk a bit about now, actually, your viral moment or viral, I suppose, reel. Is that what you say?
Yeah.
Reel? Sorry. Showing my, my on Instagram, kind of profile, how I do my things. But it's like that sense of you did a reel, isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
On I'm sorry. I mean, it's just stuff that I was clicking at home and I was like, oh my God, that is so funny. And it's so Irish as well. So talk us through how you came up with the concept and how you do them and what the comedy
I think some of my favorite stuff to kind of talk about and in stand-up as well is Irish shame. Like the fact that we're always so sorry about ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And like in general, and I noticed when I went to the toilet, or every time I go to the toilet, but specifically in a woman's toilet, when you're queuing and a woman comes out of the cubicle, she'll always look at you and just be like, oh, sorry. And you're like, you're just existing. And I'm like, are we apologizing for existing? And it's always the whispered, sorry. Yeah. So I did like a series. My poor boyfriend, like he just wanted to have a relaxing hike around County Antrim. And every 2 seconds I was like shoving my phone in his hand. I'm like, film me. Yeah. And he's like, can I just enjoy the scenery? I'm like, no. And then you just sort of like, I just edited that in a few minutes and you pop it up, and the amount of people who it resonates with.
Oh, totally. I'm always like, if I'm moving past someone, I'm like, oh, sorry. Yeah. And it's that sense of, exactly as you said, coming out of a bathroom or you're in a queue and you might have not moved forward in the queue and you're like, turn back to someone and go, oh, I'm sorry about that. And it's like, what the hell are we sorry for? Where did that come from anyway?
Even inanimate objects. Like I saw a woman the other day in the supermarket say sorry to a trolley because she banged off it. Like that's how bad we are.
That is how bad we are.
The amount of people who message me being like, I say sorry to mannequins all the time when I hit off them in shops. I'm like, I know. But I don't know. But there's like a lot of foreigners who live here, they reshared the video too. And they were saying they love that about us and they find it so cute and so endearing. So it is a sweetness about us, I suppose. But there's so many, like in my stand-up, I include a lot of it. Like there's one bit I do when you go to the doctors and like when you have to get like maybe I don't know a cervical check or something very standard and the doctor leaves the room to give you a moment to like get unchanged. So I do a bit around like what goes on in an Irish woman's head, because we're just like, okay, so like obviously I'll get undressed and then you're like, do I take my socks off? Like is that weird if I leave my socks on? And then you're like starting to panic and you're like, I don't want it to be rude, but then like I don't want my socks in her face. So then I think like everything we do is sorry, and then you leave your clothes on the ground and you're like, oh my God, it's too messy for the doctor. So then you start like folding your clothes like you work in Zara. And it's just these things. So I do this whole bit and so many women come up to me and they're like, that bit resonates. Because I'm like, but I love kind of almost poking fun at kind of the neurotic ways that Irish people are and how sorry we are about things. But I don't know where it comes from. I love to blame the Catholic Church for everything and the Brits.
But your comedy has come from, which I suppose happens to many artists, has come from a dark place.
Yeah.
And I suppose we have to touch on that because otherwise it doesn't make sense, where your comedy starts. And I would ask that of any comedian or any artist. So your mum sadly passed away very suddenly when you were very young, 23.
23, yeah.
And were you backpacking around Argentina?
Yeah.
So how has that life-changing moment brought you to where you are now? And how did that arc become part of the comedy?
That's a really good question. Like a really,
You're
really...
welcome.
Yeah,
this is why I'm paid the big bucks.
Yeah, that's brilliantly worded. Like, yeah, that's a great question. And the reason I think it's such a good question is because I've thought about this in that exact way myself, because in a way my career has accelerated the last 2 years, and people who've been in comedy maybe longer haven't been able to get a show as quick together, and people are like, how have you done this so fast? And in a way I was like, am I doing it quickly, or has my whole life before this been leading up to this? Like all the stories and all the hardships and all the struggles that I've lived through, I realize now, as much as it was difficult at the time, it's actually given me so much insight, so much reflection. It's helped me find comedy, because if you can learn to laugh in the hardest moments of your life, that's a superpower. And I think the 10, 15 years that I have spent not doing comedy, not performing, just maybe learning how to be resilient, all of that has led to this show that I'm making. And it's been the fastest thing ever I wrote it in a few months, and it got like a 4-star review by Chortle, this big comedy, the main comedy reviewer in the UK and Ireland. And I'd only run it 4 times. So I was shocked. I was like, oh, this is getting good reviews. But I think it's just real stuff, and it's my life. That's all it is. But I suppose when Mum died at 23, I had this vision of how my life was supposed to be. And I was going to study human rights. I had a partner. We were going to do charity work in South America. We moved back, and I was going to do human rights. He was going to set up a charity. This whole life of mine was like planned out. And then I was backpacking in Argentina, and then I get the call that my mom had died suddenly, and my mom was a single mom, and my younger brother was still in school. So all of a sudden I'm hurtled back to this small town in the dead of winter. And I'm now getting up in the morning, like making breakfasts for my brothers and like packing lunches. And like I had to do some grinds work in the evening just to make a bit of cash for us, because we didn't have that. We'd had like no money.
Goodness me.
Yeah, it was. So I look at that, and there's nothing funny about that. But yet there was so many pockets of absolute hilarity. And I realized, the laughter and humor in life isn't through the good times. Actually, it's the beautiful sort of relief or release that you get in the hard times. Like I remember finding my mom's bag. She had this patchwork bag that she made herself. And I found it a few days later after I'd gone home. And that was the bag she used to stay in a hotel the night before she died. So her and her work colleagues had gone out on their Christmas night out, and they went to the G Hotel in Galway. Yeah, and Mom was so excited to be in a 5-star hotel. And her workplace put them up and everything like that. It was just a small pharmacy in our local town. And Mom, in true Mom fashion, I was like, what did Mom do like the night before she died? And they were like, Aoife, she crashed a wedding. I was like... I was expecting it to be like this super sad story. I was like, what? They're like, she forced us all to go in. We crashed like a 5-star like plush wedding, and the security had to come in and like hoist my little mother out of there. I was like, oh. And then when I opened her bag again, like I was like, I had tears down my face, touching her patchwork bag. And I was thinking like, oh, this is a piece of her. And what thought I was going to like remove her pajamas and things like that. And I opened it up, and it was just full of contraband from the G Hotel. She had just totally fleeced the room. Like I was like sitting there,
branded products,
honestly, slippers, a light bulb, like everything.
Oh,
and it's just, I remember just laughing so much, and I was thinking like this is where I learned about laughter and joy, and how it kept coming. And so I write about all these that's what my show is kind of about. It's celebrating these moments of sort of like the absurdity of being alive. And I think I've never just been a funny person. I think I'm funny because I've learned how to find laughter even in the hardest moments.
Well, even in your pain, you have to have a little bit of an idiosyncrasy or a bit of a craziness or a lightness about you. I mean,
Yes.
we've all experienced it. I've lost both my parents. Life brings those hard crosses that we all have to bear, and you have to grasp that hard nettle. And sometimes it is easier to do that with a bit of laughter and a bit of joy in your heart. And that's what you bring. But I mean, also there's so much to talk about today, because your dream of acting actually was another side street to how you got here, but you experienced loads of wealth and privilege. What's that lean into comedy? How'd that happen?
So I think, although I never wanted to be a comedian, that was never in my kind of vision board, I always wanted to be an actress.
Okay.
Like ever since I was like 6 or 7. I remember I made a room full of people laugh. And I was Gary Kavanagh, the class clown. We were 7 years of age because it was like we were prepping for communion. And I remember he fell over and like hit his kind of crotch area into a table, and he screamed like a girl, and the whole class started laughing at him. And I remember feeling so bad for him, and I was like, oh, I have to do something. And I made fun of the teacher, and I started like doing impressions of her, and obviously the teacher was like screaming at me to stop, but I kept going. And all of a sudden I remember the whole class turned around and laughed with me, and I could just see Gary Kavanagh's face like in this sort of relief. And I remember thinking, oh, this feels nice. And I was like, oh, this feels good. And I was like, I must have gone home and told my mum, because after that I was put into loads of the local pantomime groups. But like, we're from like, at that time, it was sort of like a poor, maybe more rural community. But just loads of local artists put on these sort of like cheap or free pantomime groups. And I felt privileged to be able to be part of them. And I think I never knew that we were poor. Like I knew we were on sort of like, you know, benefit and stuff like that. And my mom, she worked always, but like with 4 kids, it was really hard. So we kept kind of, but I still never understood growing up in this beautiful community. I never understood that we were maybe slightly underprivileged. And I think that's
Where are you from?
Kinbarra in County Galway.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's the lovely thing about when you grow up in sort of more integrated communities. Like there's no such thing as privilege because everybody's treated the same. We all go to the same school. We all have the same opportunities.
And Galway is so bubbling with creativity. It's an amazing. I love Galway. Sure, my father's from Mayo, so you know we have that on our doorstep, and we're always back and forth. Westport, Castlebar, Galway. But you know, London then became this other side street. So tell us about that.
Yeah, because. So then I was like, right, I'm going to be an actress. This is so easy. I was in drama school with Nicola Coughlin. We used to go every Saturday morning together. Me and Nicola, we would sit like after our drama classes and we would plan out our Oscar speeches together. And everything was lined up. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then when I was 19, I went to London with a show with my local theatre group. We'd won a competition and we got to perform it in the National Theatre of London. And I was just on, you know, cloud 9. I was like, this is amazing. And I was in the green room with all these other groups, these theatre groups, and they all had these strange accents, kind of posh London accents, and they all came up to me and they're like, where do you study? Are you studying at Lambda, whatever? And I was like, just a Galway Youth Theatre. And I remember even when I said it, the words fell out of my mouth and something like crumbled behind my rib cage. I felt for the first time so small. And I realized, I was like, and I looked down at my clothes, at like, you know, my penny shoes, at my pennies clothes, and I looked at them and I looked around and I just felt so intimidated. The room got smaller, I got smaller, and I went home, and this is not me being dramatic, went back to my mom that day, I was 19, and I said, Mom, I never want to act again. I felt like it all of a sudden dawned on me that in order to be an actress, I need to probably move to London. I'd need to have someone or some money to support me to do that. And I'd be competing with all these people who go to private drama schools and they go to theatre, like really good theatre groups. Or maybe they have parents who work in the arts. And it just sort of, the reality just burst my bubble.
Because that's not the case.
It's not the case at all.
So, you know, that in case anyone's listening thinking, really? No. I suppose it's just how you felt at the time.
I felt at the time.
And of course, then that gear changed you and moved you into a different direction. Yes. But technically, I mean, you know, I went to drama school in Trinity, you know, Colin Farrell went to the Gaiety School of Acting. I mean, you don't have to go to your
Barry Keoghan as well.
Barry Keoghan never even trained. So, you know, of course. But of course, that was a moment in your life that changed where you went to as well. And your 20s and your 30s, and you were juggling lots of different jobs before, because you're only 38, so you've arrived, Aoife. You know, you've landed where you want to be, and maybe it took you a little while to get where you needed to be, but you're here now.
And that's why I love to show people as well, is that like exactly what you said, like even the words you said, you're here now. And I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get where you want to be, and just that you're here now, and that's all that matters. And I think like I was so worried. I remember when I was in my sort of maybe early 30s, I remember looking and being like, I want more than this. Like I was an English language teacher and there's nothing wrong with that job, but like there's no security in it, no stability. And I just had this burning feeling that there was something else out there for me. I had hoped that I could just leave performing behind and that was just a silly dream, but there was something willing me on.
Sadly not, Aoife. If you're in any way a creative and you try and put yourself into a different box, it always pops back up.
So true.
Because, you know, I've also been a creative for many years, and you think to yourself, oh, I could do this or I could do that. Maybe I'll go back and do law, or maybe I'll do... But unfortunately, the seductive nature of the arts,
isn't it?
Comedy, acting, presenting, it always brings you back up to the surface, and it'll always find you, even if you only do it on the side. But it'll always be there because you need to feel that passion and that drive. But let's talk about your videos, because we mentioned there, you know, 2 million, you know, they're big numbers, or 145,000 people on Instagram. Where did you get that light bulb moment to go online and go on Instagram? Because it must be difficult. If you've got the comedy funny bone gene, where do you put your comedy to start getting people to enjoy your performances? So
I'm one of those annoying people where the pandemic was actually kind of like
it was
beneficial.
Good for you.
Yeah. You know, obviously aside from all the trauma and the tragedy, but as in terms of like, I needed something at that time in my life to break, because I was just cruising. Like, so I was doing my teaching, I was in a relationship, I would go out with my friends at the weekend, and I was like, my life's grand. I don't need to change much about it. And then when the pandemic happened, I lost my job, and my boyfriend also broke up with me the same week that the pandemic hit.
The dirty hound.
The dirty hound. He's from England, so
Yeah.
So then I was like, right, I have no job, no boyfriend, and I couldn't see my friends because we were in the middle of a lockdown. And I was like, well, the students are out there. I'll just maybe put up some silly videos for like English language students who are now basically in their bedrooms. So I started doing sort of like videos just for them to teach them English. And I just started posting. And when I look back at the first video I ever made, I actually cringe. I'm like, oh my God, it was so bad. Like the quality and like everything.
Yeah, but that's just...
But that's why I say to people, I'm like, you have to start. Don't wait to be perfect. If I waited till I was really good to start, I still wouldn't be here now.
Yeah, it's the right way
I
to
literally
do it.
just started. It wasn't that
Just
good.
give it a go.
Just give it a go and just post. And who cares? You get better through posting. And I learned how to edit on the way there. But then I started making silly videos about the English language, and I have one of the characters I have is the English language. And then all of a sudden Irish audiences started finding that quite funny. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting more attention for the funnier videos. So then I just started posting more comedy, not related to English. And eventually I just moved into making full-on comedy videos. It's crazy.
You know, it's funny because even before we got rolling, we had talked yesterday, because obviously I always talk to my guests a little bit before just to see what they want to talk about. And really what resonated with me when I put the receiver down to you was that you'd mentioned, you know, how sometimes there can be a level of misogyny in comedy. I thought we'd moved past that. You know, we mentioned Joanne McNally. I mean, she's just a force, isn't she? And she's paved the way for other Irish female comedians. But, you know, you'd said to me sometimes, which broke my heart a little, that you stand on stage and the men roll their eyes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wanted you on here today because I find female comedians, I mean, I love my Billy Connolly's, and I'm a fanatic. I absolutely think he's my favorite. I love him. But, you know, I also love my Joe Brands. I love Ruby Wax. I would love like, you know, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders. So is that true? I think people need to hear that there is that level of eye rolling still when female comedians come on stage.
Well, like I was at Joanne McNally's, her first Prosecco Express, and she did this bit at the beginning when she was like, any men here? And then there was very few sounds of like, you know, and then she's like, who aren't gay? And then the sounds drop. And then she's like, who weren't forced here by their partner? And it was like, no one. So like that even just shows you, whereas, and I've said, because if I ask my boyfriend, do you support male and female comedians? He would say, yes, I'm an ally. Of course, I support both. I'm like, would you and your guy friends go see a female, like Emma Doran, who I think is phenomenal? She was in Kilkenny recently, where we live. I was like, why don't you and your lads go see Emma? And he knows she's really good. He was like, oh yeah, we wouldn't. And I was like, yet me and the girls would go see Tommy Tiernan. We would go see Chris Kent. So like, I feel like female comedians are a female or a gay man's comic, whereas male comedians are an every man's comic. And that's where I think there's still a disconnect. Like when men of their own choosing, not with their female partner, choose to go see a female comedian on their own without being forced, a straight man, then I will say we've arrived and there is full equality.
So what change do you think needs to happen?
I think it's honestly, it's just a block they have, because it's not that we aren't funny. I mean, when I do drag John to see female comedians, and we went to see Fiona Frawley a while back, and he was laughing harder than me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, John, you know and he even said...
And Deirdre O'Kane, I mean, another perfect
there's so
example.
Many, oh my God, Deirdre as well. Deirdre's probably a better example of maybe how I feel like maybe she might get more men coming to see her. But even then, so I recently went to see Hannah Berner, and she's one of the fastest rising comedians in the US. She's married to Des Bishop. I went to see her full hour in Vicar Street. It was amazing. She's hilarious. There was a man sat next to me, and he didn't look up from his phone once.
Oh no.
He was obviously dragged there by his girlfriend.
Oh, no.
She invites Des, her partner, on stage just at the end, just to say hello. He literally just says hello. He's not part of the show. He says something. It's not really that funny. He's not trying to be funny. And this man puts his phone down immediately. So it's not that like he didn't give Hannah a chance. So I'm like, it's this block that men have towards women still.
I interviewed Sarah Silverman years ago, and obviously, you know, lots of comedians blend into acting.
Yes.
I mean, you see it on the Graham Norton sofa. You know, we have our two steed actors, and then you've your comedian at the end of the red sofa. And I remember her saying that exactly that. You know, it's just really hard as a female comedian. You have to work harder. You have to climb the greasy pole faster and quicker and stronger than most men, and that does break my heart a little bit. But if you know that's the case, you've built up your resilience. We've spoken about, the loss of your mother and all the things that you've had to do. So are you ready? Are you armed for this next chapter now?
Yes.
Do you feel that you are?
Yes. It's almost like you take on the challenge then. You're like, I'm going to make you laugh. Like when I
I don't care anymore. I have so much life experience.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing.
Honestly, that's it. And also, I think you just get this resilience of when I did the show in County Antrim a while back, there was the front row was all these sort of older men because it was in a smaller town, and to the left they didn't laugh at one thing I said, but the rest of the room was howling and stuff. And at this point I've just got such a thick skin that I'm like, I don't care. Also in comedy you're not going to make not everyone's going to like you, so you also have to just be open to the fact that like you're also not everyone's comedian.
That's the thing, isn't it? Because you're really putting yourself out there. That's more than acting. That's more than even TV presenting, where people can go, I don't like your hair, or fair enough, my hair's not great today, or I don't like your top. I don't like, or I didn't like that question. But as a comedian, it's really hard because people can just come back with, well, she's not funny.
Yeah.
And then that's like,
yeah.
That's your legs have been chopped off.
Yes. Yes.
I
always say
that's not great. How do you deal with that?
So because people say it as well that's when it really annoys me online. I get so many, and it's mainly men who commented on my videos going, not funny. And I always comment back, and I say, I would like you to correct that and say, I don't think it's funny. You saying it's not funny is you are speaking on behalf of everybody. If you don't find me funny, that's fine. I'm sure I wouldn't find you funny either. Like,
let's talk positively. I don't find you funny either. Get your phone out and let's stroll these people back. So we have to touch on Ricky Gervais. I love Ricky Gervais, and I find him just so inspirational in terms of his comedy is just dark. It's black. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
Look at what he's done, of course, with the Golden Globes. Nobody will ever touch him with a barge pole again. But I think what he says is about, comedy is for cross-generational, but it's also, if you're offended, why are you offended? It's comedy. What's your take on that? Because some comedians actually agree with him. Others, venomously disagree with him.
So a comedian in Dublin gave me such good advice when I first started, because I said, am I going to get worried about like maybe saying something that might be offensive or going too, as you said, too dark. And he said, you can say whatever you want as long as it's funny. And so you can punch down, so you can, offend people or maybe make fun of certain kinds of people, as long as the payoff is that it's funny.
Okay.
And then everybody will forgive you. So the only time people sort of get annoyed about things as well is maybe if it wasn't that funny. And then so that's comedians. And then the other part of it is, I think, even if it's not funny, but if it's framed in a joke and it's kind of in a performance style, like at the Oscars? I just think
the Golden Globes. Yeah.
Then I'm just like, I think it should be left alone. I think I don't agree with cancel culture for comedy.
I mean, you have your Mickey Flanagans that are very funny. They're kind of, he's really funny, and then you have others that really delve darker, and go to those with disabilities or, something very strong and stark like rape or, and you're like, oh God, how could that even be funny? How am I laughing? And I don't find myself sometimes laughing at the darker topics. But I do find that certain elements, like when the celebrities are, adhered to, which he did, they didn't like it, and therefore it became a cancel culture. And I just thought, well, it's funny. It's funny that you're a celebrity and you take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
And certain elements are. And Ricky's, I suppose, take on offensiveness in general in the comedy genre is quite refreshing. But I know people don't share my views on that.
No, I would totally share it. I think maybe I don't agree with everything Ricky Gervais has ever said.
Of course.
But I agree with the fact that it has to be a safe zone. I think art in general, look what's happening with Kneecap.
You can't sanitize everything either.
No, that's what I mean. I think art in general, I think if you look at what's happening with Kneecap, again, it's not about our opinions on the matter. It's just that they're a punk band doing punk things. I think in music, in paintings, if you're a graffiti artist, if you're a comedian, a rapper, it's art has to be an act of revolution and rebellion. And whether that's in comedy, our job as comedians is to make fun of the establishment, of celebrities, whatever. That's the job.
But then the more social issues or real issues that come into play, how do you make that funny? But
if you can make it funny, and if you can, and even if it's touching on the inappropriateness, because you said sometimes I don't laugh if it goes too dark, that's because it wasn't well scripted. I've laughed at things that normally I wouldn't laugh at.
I know that you think, oh my God,
I can't believe I'm laughing at
so
it. That's a good joke. That's what that is. Because if it's written well, even if you punch down, if it's written well and the payoff is I made you laugh, then if it was worth it. But if you punch down and you go so dark and all you do is make people uncomfortable, then that's not, I still don't think that person should be cancelled. That's just not a good joke. It's just not funny.
Fair enough.
So I think there's a big difference, yeah. And I think all art should be, as you said, don't sanitize it. It should be protected from cancel culture.
I mean, obviously we talked about women, we've talked about, comedy in general, but, I just would love to know, where's your inspiration from? Who do you draw yours from? I mentioned Billy Connolly. I actually love Chris Rock. I love Ricky Gervais. Where have you signed on? Who kind of makes your heart tickle?
That's such a hard one because I'm such a bad comedian in that I don't watch that much comedy, but in terms of I love comedy writers and my dream would be to write something on the lines of what Phoebe Waller-Bridge did in Fleabag.
Okay.
So that level of comedy, I just adore that sort of
Sharon Horgan.
Yes, Sharon Horgan is
Bad
my
Sisters. Yeah.
So I think and I've seen Aisling B back in the day. I know she's got a new comedy hour out now. But I love Deirdre Kane, Emma Doran. I love anything. And Joanne McNally. I think most of the newer kind of female comedians too, I'm obsessed with.
But the thing about being a comedian is, as I said, it can bleed into so many other things. You look at Ellen DeGeneres, who's a stand-up comic through and through. And, she has her own daytime chat show for decades. Things like comedy, it just lends so much more to even back to acting again if you decided that's something that you'd like to do, because people want to have actors that are comedians in their films. But also look at Father Ted. Graham Norton started with Father Ted and others. So do you feel like there's a whole plethora of things that you'd like to tackle, not just comedy?
Yeah, I think I would love to eventually write a TV show. So that would be, I would love to write my own show. I'd love to get into screenplay writing for film and maybe get back into acting as well. I think I still have that calling to get back onto the stage 100%.
Okay, amazing. Well, you won't believe it, but we're actually out of time. It's 30 minutes and there we go. I was just so delighted to have you on the show and hear your story and, know that I love female comedians. I just think we're really, really funny.
We are.
And I think it just is that element of enjoying what's the next generation, and you're very much part of that.
Thank you so much.
I really look forward to what you're doing next. Your show is called Good Grief.
Yes.
And people can catch you in The Ambassador all through September.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.